Welcome back, guys, to the Self-Selecting Podcast. I'm your host, Cory, and today we are joined with Sebastian. Sebastian, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Cory. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. For a filming day. I feel energized. I think it's because it was one of those days like the words just they they flew nicely. I didn't stand in my own way, but I'm ready to be done. I'm ready to go eat and go touch grass, see some sunlight. I'm in my cave, just like talking to myself for way too long. Um,
Well, you're over in Venice, California, right?
so I actually moved. I think last time when we podcast, which for listeners, if you haven't checked out our episode on Sebastian's channel, what is your channel called? Give them
It's just Brass Tack Bodybuilding is the name of the podcast, but it's on my channel, Sebastian Burka.
Okay, Sebastian Burka. Type that into YouTube. Go listen. Also, go give him a follow. Go check out his stuff. He puts out a lot of similar content to that which I do. I think if you guys like my content, you will really like his. We did an episode back in April. Is that right?
I believe so, around then.
Yeah, yeah. You guys, y'all really liked that. If you were a newer listener, new subscriber, go check it out if you want, or if you're new, I don't know, listen to this one and then decide for yourself if you like or hate this, and then I don't know, do what you want. But I wanted to have Sebastian on here today to talk with you guys, largely because I think in this sport, there are a lot of individuals who kind of get into the coaching space. Some kind of go the route of like, I'm not touching PEDs under like the clients I work with. I don't want to be involved. I don't want to have anything to do with it. And you know, like my perception, at least from my viewpoint, it seems like it's something that you have essentially made it a priority because it's a responsibility. It's something that is prevalent within our sport. You've made it a priority to educate yourself on. And I commend you on that because I think a lot of people in this space kind of just fall into it and then acts that just, oh, fuck it, we'll just do it the best I can. And it clearly shows with the value that you provide online, but also to your clients. Is that something, I guess, back up. How long have you been coaching?
I've been coaching, I would say full time for 5 years, right? But I mean, really, I started writing programs and selling stuff to people when I was like 17, which I would look at a 17-year-old now and be like, you shouldn't be doing that. But it was like basic $10 programs, and I would, help people out and stuff. But full time coaching for 5 years now.
I can definitely relate. I started coaching, I think I was like 19 or 20. I was young. And looking back, I'm like, yo, you should not have been coaching because do something first. Just, I mean, granted, I'd competed and I'd done things and it was under the scope of what I'd been doing. But I mean, like that, certainly it's given me a lot of experience, as I imagine it's given you a lot of experience in really seeing the shift in how coaching and like what coaching has evolved to today.
Oh my God, I could go off on a rant right now.
Do it. Do it. This is take the
There is
floor is yours.
there is a huge problem in this industry right now. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but we have this epidemic of people where it's becoming acceptable for anybody and everybody can be a coach, right? Because now we have this you know how you see a lot of these guys go from fitness coaching and then they become business coaches, right?
Oh
And
yeah.
there's this pyramid scheme behind this, and I've seen this with so many people now, and it's like nobody's talking about this, but it's a huge problem. These guys, they make a little bit of money from coaching. They make $10,000 a month from coaching, right? Now I'm going to post my Stripe bank account. I'm going to say, hey, I could show you how to make $10,000 a month. Now they're going to sell business coaching. Now they made $25,000, $50,000, $75,000 a month. Now they're going to show that, hey, I could show you how to make much money from fitness coaching. But now it's not really from fitness coaching. It's from selling the business coaching. So they're selling this lie, right? And then what they have these people do is they bring them into this mentorship program where they teach them how to just do a basic sales tactic on the phone to sell somebody and close them, not actually build any type of brand. But then the whole scheme here is once you provide proof that you've made a couple $1,000s, you're going to do the same thing here. Now you're going to help other people make money just by doing this bullshit tactic. And none of these people know how to coach in the first place. They don't know anything about coaching, and they're advertising it as you don't need to know how to coach. We'll teach you how to use AI to write programs. It's like they're basically trying to normalize ghost coaching in a sense. And this is a huge thing. I see a lot of these kids doing this, and it's a problem because a lot of people were getting fucked over. Really, I don't know. Am I allowed to curse on here? Should I not curse?
You can curse and it's encouraged. It's
Okay.
actually, you get a fine. Don't post this if you don't curse enough.
Okay.
Oh,
Good.
yeah. No, I think, gosh, so many things to say on that. Not just with the business coaching, also the social media growth, advertising, marketing agency thing. But yeah, no, the ghost coaching, the pyramid scheme around like coaches having coaches under them, like I get it. And I mean, like, it's definitely something that I see business models. I'm like, okay, in theory, that makes sense. But in reality, okay, you're bringing in people who maybe are more advanced under you, who then are like coaching under you. I think really where the problem I see is like with not being honest that you are not getting coached by the person you think is coaching you. Um, I've had that happen where a few clients have come to me. They've been like, I thought it was from big name coach. It was actually from their assistant. I was never talking with that coach to begin with. And I mean, like, you shouldn't necessarily have to vet and like test to be like, is the person I'm actually being coached by, is that the influencer? Is that the competitor? But the fact of the matter is, I think that's happening more than people realize.
No, 100%. It's obviously very frowned upon if you're involved in bodybuilding and you know the industry. But Cory, listen, this shit that I've seen recently is insane. There are literally kids making 60, 70, $80,000 a month from using AI to write programs and sell, because the general population interested in fitness doesn't know anything. They're not in this deep. They're not aware. So some guy sends you a program, they have no idea. It's like, okay, this is cool. This is great. And they're just running it up. They're just finessing the entire general population. And I don't know, it's crazy. Obviously, this is a problem in bodybuilding when we see the ghost coaching stuff, but when we look at the actual general population, it's like a whole nother level how much scamming is involved here.
AI is not 100% correct. And if you've used AI, you know it's wrong often. Like, it's kind of like that relative, like they know a little bit about, like, I mean, like, granted, you can get them to respond, but you're like, should we fact check this? And like, I mean,
Yeah.
my favorite, I'm big chat GPT fan. Going through nursing school, big fan with that. But hey, you gotta proofread. You gotta
Mhm.
see what the shit it's actually saying. And like, you say that also too with like captions and just like general like copy being written, and like there's no kind of, I don't know, verification, checks and balances around it. But as it relates to coaching, I guess why do you think this happens outside of just like pure greed and being like a shit human?
Why do I think that people are scamming people?
Yeah, why do you think people are scamming people?
I think it's just exploiting the fitness industry because there's no regulations in place. Anybody could do whatever the fuck they want, and there are no consequences. So it's just people taking advantage of that, right? This doesn't happen in any other industry. You can't go into the NBA and say, "I'm just gonna become a coach now." We're like, you have, who the fuck are you? You've proven nothing. Why would anybody listen to you? But in the industry, you don't even have to have a great physique. You can just look better than the average person. You have social media now, so all you need to do is post some stuff. Doesn't have to be correct because people are not educated in fitness in general. So I could sit here and say all you need to do is, track your protein and you'll look like Ronnie Coleman. And the average person might hear that and be like, okay, I'll listen to this guy because he has a six pack. And it's just exploiting the industry for what it really is. There's nothing in place to regulate this stuff.
You know how I feel about that in the realm of how it relates to providers and pharmacology. I think we touched a little bit on that, like in the clinic setting, how you have individuals who, frankly, it's not a matter of them being licensed or unlicensed, but you have individuals who are incentivized to push drugs in any capacity, drugs, medication, and simply like it comes down to the ignorance of the consumer. The consumer
Mm-hmm.
is relying on you, not you in this sense, general you, this person in a position where they can recommend that you take these things and they can charge you whatever the fuck they want to charge you. But in a lot of cases, which this is something that I have I have a few people that I work with, I coach who work for clinics who do this. And like they're like, yo, you want some tea? You want some content for a podcast or a reel next? Because I'll tell you, this is what my sales manager recommended that I do. And it's horrendous. It's something that last 2 or 3 episodes I've talked about when I've had guests on, because as other educators, professionals in the space, they've been like, yeah, like I can't trust partnering with a clinic at this point because I don't know what this like wellness specialist is going to recommend. And frankly, I don't know if it's going to be in line with what I'm telling my client they should do.
Hmm. Who do you think is more at fault here? Do you think it falls on the consumer, or do you, because you as the provider or the coach, did, I don't want to say there's a moral obligation, but there is like morality involved to, decide what you're going to push, what you're going to sell. But is it wrong to take, I mean, I guess there is inherently like no good or bad or wrong or right. I don't know. It's all perspective, right? Like we could say, because this is what I'm looking at, right? You could sit here and say that the kid that's scamming everybody is just taking advantage of the industry and taking the opportunity that's there because people are undereducated, and if he's not going to do it, somebody else is going to do it, right? And or you could say it's entirely the consumer's fault for not being more educated in the space, just like how this might be a little controversial, but how people will like hate on women who do OnlyFans and stuff. But is it women's moral obligation, or is it the men that are feeding into it because that's the consumer?
Mm.
You know what? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, no, it's like you have supply and demand, and these things wouldn't exist if there wasn't such a heavy demand. I do, I mean, like, and I try to balance out like my, hey, like, don't be scammed with, but be fucking smart. Like, don't be so ignorant. Don't be an idiot. Like, don't go and get this itemized list from a clinic, from a spa, and then be upset when you're like, I've been paying $1,200 a month for, X, Y, and Z, and I've not seen results. It's like, well, did you think that just paying that $1,200 a month, did you think taking, 16 different things, did you think that was actually going to make difference if you changed nothing on the back end? Like if you did nothing with your programming, like the big four levers, like diet, cardio, training, recovery, you've changed nothing there, but you think, okay, because I'm doing sub Q injections like pretty much every day at this point, I'm taking all of these supplements, all of these peptides. It's like that in itself, you might see some improvement. And I would hope at a certain price point, you saw something without changing anything within your diet. But there are a lot of ways that you can just like net zero any kind of pharmacological action that you have in place. And one, like, not one, because I just listed off like three different things. But I think at this point, there's so much information out there, and there are people that are coming out right, being like, "Hey, it these things are not magic." However, you also have the other end of it, where you have the influencers who are sponsored by these companies, who get the commission, who are just putting out just like shit content, just like, "Oh, this worked." Clomiphene worked better than Tren. It's like, did it? Did it really?
Yeah,
How?
yeah,
Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, like it does, there is a responsibility on the consumer's end to be educated and to not be so ignorant and so trusting. I think in that realm where you're operating under this banner, it's kind of like, come on, like, how are you going to sleep at night knowing that all of what you're saying, you're latching on to this cherry picked copy that the company gave you, and they told you, just tell them this, tell them that this will help you lose weight. It's like, that I feel like has got to fall on the individual selling.
yeah, yeah. Um, it's tough. I think at the end of the day, the more I'm thinking about this, there's always going to be shitty people. There's always going to be people that scam, and it really, I think it really does kind of. I don't want to say it's your fault because people don't know any better, and a lot of people just aren't educated in these things, so they see something and they're convinced otherwise. But some people learn the hard way, and it really is like it is your job to educate yourself and know what you're like. Would you go get into a random alleyway to buy weed from a guy if you wanted to buy weed? Like the consequences might be there, right? It's like you're just jumping into something you're not that well informed about because you got sold something. Like maybe do some due diligence and spend some time looking into these things yourself before you go and pay somebody $1,000.
I love that, and I want to keep the conversation going in this direction. So you have a client who they are ignorant. Let's say they find themselves in this position where they're spending a lot of money on drugs that they know very little about. Okay, what is the process? Like, they genuinely are like, I don't want to be scammed, but I'm paying a bit of money like for these things that I'm being told they should get me to where I want to go. 1 month in or 6 weeks in, what is the decision making process? What's the framework? You're kind of like, on their shoulder, like, hey, this is what you need to do to determine, am I being scammed? What does that look like, if that makes any sense?
Wait. So I have a client, my client.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe they come to you and they're like, I'm in this position, and you're not just wanting to be like, yo, you're getting scammed. You're wanting them to learn the ability to make that assessment on their own. What kind of questions do they need? Like, what would their assessment be like to avoid at least repeating that same, like continuing with whatever subscription service, or continuing just being in a position where they're being taken advantage of?
Are we referring strictly to PEDs?
No, no, I guess it can be to anything.
Be to anything. That's a broad spectrum.
Maybe,
So I'm just gonna say, if it was PEDs in the first place, I would have asked them where they're sourcing it from, if they have any proof that the batches were tested, if they got blood work before. Because if they started with me, I would have had them do bloods before in the first place. But to say they already are on something, um, I mean, you just see how they're responding to everything. Like you get their feedback, all those things. But I guess like PEDs are one thing, right? Because you could test for that. It's not really like too hard to figure out if the stuff is fake or not, right? You kind of just go off of their feedback, how they're progressing in the gym. You could draw labs, you could kind of come to conclusions if you just put a few things together over time. But to prevent them from getting scammed, you got to be more specific here.
okay. So you're wanting them to basically realize on their own that, hey, maybe there needs to be things separate from the drugs that they're taking. Let's go with the example, the PEDs. So they get this laundry list of like peptides, over the counter, not over the counter supplements, but basically high priced supplements to include into their regimen, that, with the promise is like, hey, this will help you, whatever, lose fat and build muscle at the same time. Would there be like conversation around like, hey, what do you know about these drugs? Like, that's kind of where my mind goes, is like, if I'm wanting to coach someone on like, hey, develop that peripheral like assessment of like, is not even, is this evidence based, but does this make sense logically? Am I getting sold basically the belief that like I can just take these drugs and circumvent having to change anything on the diet or training front?
Yes, I mean, if somebody's giving them, you're basically saying somebody's giving them like recommendations to buy stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I would, if they came to me, asked me about these things, I would give my input on, obviously, if I thought they had any legitimacy to it, and explain to them like why I would think those could be implemented into a protocol, like what would be the use, or if they were things that I saw were scams, not really worth investing into, I would explain that as well. I would be like for example, I had another guy come to me the other day, and he mentioned something about some peptide, right? Some random peptide he saw some guy talk about, and how it could be better than, I don't know if it was like Clen or T3 or something like that, but it was like one of those random things you never heard about. It was like a research chemical. I was like, well, we have no literature on this whatsoever. I've never even heard about this before. You haven't seen anybody in the field use it. So, I mean, realistically, do you want to be the guinea pig for something that nobody else has testified to, because some guy's talking about theories behind how it could potentially be better? It's like, I would rather wait until maybe a couple of years from now when a bunch of people have done it. If it's that great, I think we'll come to that conclusion and figure it out, and you'll know then, right? It's just people hear about things, and if something is good, if something is that good, like there's going to be a large population behind it. I would say, like, nobody, like in bodybuilding, everybody's using the same things for the most part, right? Nobody's using these crazy offset things, and we saw that with SARMs too. SARMs came out, and everybody thought they were going to be the greatest thing ever. They're going to replace PEDs, and you know, people did that at first, and then a few years went by, and we figured out that obviously that wasn't the case, and here we are. But everybody who jumped on it at first, maybe they suffered consequences. I don't know, but they jumped the gun on it.
I mean, right. So, like with any kind of investment, like having at least the ability to reference whether or not the majority is vouching for it, and even like early adopters. Okay, what are the consequences? I think with a lot of the drugs coming out, everything, is kind of marketed as like the hit thing. Like, this is going to help you lose body fat. This is going to help you build muscle faster. It's going to help restore suppressed test levels without starting testosterone. Like, what is fuck I would bet money that you've seen advertisements for this. What's the one that's come out that's like, it's basically like a combination, like it's not Hims, but it's like the equivalent, like the next version of that, where it's like we can get you set up on TRT that's not TRT, that doesn't shut you down. And it's like, it's a form of enclomiphene, but um,
What?
I don't know. My Jordan keeps getting ads for it, and he's like, I swear, like my phone hears you talking about TRT, and like it just starts shuttling different things. But my I guess my very roundabout point I'm trying to make is like, I want to look at like, okay, asking the client mechanistically, what do you think, or what were you told this drug would do? Like, just
Mm-hmm.
simply, like, is this going to help you lose fat or build muscle? And if it's some ambiguous combination, I kind of want to probe as to why and how. Like, how is it going to help you do both of these things? Because I think like you pull that thread, like even like marginally, and it begins to unravel. You see, like, oh, wait, like this person has literally a sentence as to what it does. And that sentence usually isn't, oh, it helps the conversion of T4 to T3. Like, it's usually
Mm-hmm.
some glossed over, just honestly copy that is then fed to them to be told, like, yeah, you just take this and you lose fat. It's like, but how is that going to help you create a better deficit?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I always would encourage anybody to understand the mechanisms behind why they're taking something before they jump the gun to make the decision to take it.
I think oftentimes there is just that promise that like people buy into. At least that's what I see specifically around the talk around peptides, with the hope that, okay, this is going to basically allow me to do something that I couldn't do otherwise. Where I know with my own coaching, I'm pretty sure with yours, like, falling back on like, okay, what are the primary levers that are going to drive the most progress? That's typically where I revert back to, is like, are we doing those things that are needed to put you in a position where if this drug does what you think it does, you can fully take advantage of it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, you're just referring to all the staples being in place before even trying to take advantage of something like that.
It's a foreign concept. It's not sexy to sell that.
It's because everybody wants a shortcut. Nobody has patience. Everybody wants progress now. They want to say, I can't tell you how many guys I've gotten that are obese. I want to say T3. I want to say Clint. I'm like, what are we talking about? Why?
Have you
No.
tracked calorie?
No. How about you just follow this diet for 6 months? That's it. Do some cardio. You don't need T3.
What is the process for you with getting lab work done for new clients?
What do you mean by that?
Do people typically come to you with lab work, or is that something you kind of have to like beg to get them to do?
I usually end up having to beg. Sometimes guys come with lab work, and those guys that come with lab work, and 9 out of 10 times are guys that are already on gear and experienced on gear. Um, Natural clients, I don't force them to pull labs. I mean, I do try to really stress it to get them to pull labs, at least once or twice a year. But if a natural guy comes to me, I'm usually not like, let's pull labs right off the bat, because a lot of people will just realistically, like, financially aren't willing to do it. So I'll, be lenient with, like, okay, like in a couple months, like when you're okay, like pull the labs from here. Cause I have lab requisitions built out for clients, but yeah, I mean, usually, I don't know how it is with you, but usually you kind of have to. It's a financial thing. People don't want to spend the money on it, and they don't understand the importance of it. It's like, okay, maybe nothing's wrong right now, but when maybe something does go wrong, what are we going to refer that back to? Like, they don't really grasp that concept.
Yeah, no. It is similar in my boat, and I don't want people to spend money if it's not needed. Like,
Yeah.
if we're not going to do something with it, and I think that's like a good rule of thumb. If knowing these labs, if like knowing these values isn't going to dictate the trajectory, or there's going to be no change in intervention, why would we pull them? And I mean, I'll put an asterisk there. I mean, there are times where I think it's important just to have a baseline, and I mean, I'm fortunate that a lot of women who come to me, their goal is to use PEDs at some point, whether it be currently or down the line. So asking them to get lab work in a way is something I think they anticipate. So a lot of them will come with labs, but the issue I run into is typically they'll go through their provider, or they'll go through just some kind of online entity, and we'll get labs back. And it's very incomplete, very incomplete.
What do you mean by that?
Like, it's not what I need. It's like a T4 value, a
Oh,
creatinine, and a
because they
hemoglobin.
don't get all the biomarkers right. They don't get all
Yeah,
the
no,
biomarkers down.
it's like five things, and it's like one of these might be useful, but oh, you don't know where you are in your cycle, like in your menstrual cycle. So okay, this isn't really that useful.
Yeah, no, I have specific instructions for how to take the labs. Make sure you rest beforehand. Obviously, you need to take them fasted. Then I have like all the biomarkers written out. I'm partnered with two different labs where they can just go and order them because I mean, I'm sure you dealt with this too. When they go to the doctor, it's a whole ordeal. Like getting all the markers you need from a doctor is almost impossible. And when people do get it done, they end up paying more out of pocket because insurance won't cover it than if they just go through one of the places where you could order them online because those places have partnerships with places like LabCorp, so they get them at a discounted rate.
I do like Life Extension. I'm not partnered with them. Who are the two companies you're partnered with?
Synergistic Labs and Merrick. So Merrick has like this full panel that they have for both males and females, and then they have a comprehensive one and a complete one. And then it's super in depth. And then I have another one just through Synergistic Labs that I built out a couple of years ago that just has all like the basic biomarkers that I want to get checked at a minimum. So then they usually go through that, but I recently partnered with Merrick, so I've had people go through there as well, and it is a bit more in depth. And then they do like a follow up call with them and everything, and go over the markers too. So, and then that all gets relayed to me.
Nice, nice. I mean, like I think it's good. Like I think it's good to have different options. There's another company I haven't tried out yet, but I did get a tip that they were one that I mean you can like kind of order a la carte, which I really found interesting because with Life Extension you can't really just get single labs, and this company is Ulta Lab Test, Ulta like the makeup company, but
Oh,
only
nice.
girls are gonna yeah. Anyways, I'm gonna check them out and see how that goes. But typically, I go through Life Extension. I mean, the basic hormonal panel is like $150, so it's not bad at all. And I mean, like if you're just doing like I don't know if you don't need something that's fully comprehensive, I like that one. But um, no, I think like on the female side, it can be a little bit of a headache, especially because you're then relying on the individual to get them done when they need to get them done, when there is context that would then give us, I don't know, just some framework to at least make sense of the serum levels. Right
Mm-hmm.
now, working, I guess, like with your current clientele, do you work with a lot of females?
I have primarily males. I've been recently getting quite a few more females though.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I think that's one of the harder parts about like working with women, whether they want to be enhanced or not, is just like understanding like where can these values, when do they matter and what do they mean based on timing it relative to their cycle. But then on top of that, it's like, okay, well, if you're amenorrheic or if you're going through different points in a phase where maybe we don't know how regular you actually are, certain values can carry different weights, depending on what that is. But working with primarily males, do you work with physique athletes or like individuals who are looking to get on stage, or mostly lifestyle?
Yeah, so the primary, I would say, demographic of my clientele is going to be guys that are around my age, maybe a little bit younger, that are kind of getting into bodybuilding, want to take it more seriously, want to get on stage at some point in time, but aren't quite there yet. That's probably the primary demographic that I have. I do have competitors, more advanced guys. I do have a lot of general population, but the vast majority of them are like people that are me 8 years ago.
Okay, that's interesting. So, with that group, more specifically, is that, I mean, like, what would you say is like the bigger challenges that you see working with that individual? Is it the patience of like, hey, these things are going to come. You have to do this for a long time.
It's definitely patience. It's 100% patience. It's you can't relay patience to somebody. Everybody wants, oh, can we? I'm comfortable taking more doses, higher doses. We can ramp it up here. I'm like, we don't need higher doses right now. You're going to be fine. Just overthinking a lot, especially now with all the information that is presented through short form content. That's a lot. That's a big one. Again, especially with the younger guys, the ones that are like 19, 20. It's nonstop. Why is this? Why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? Why aren't we doing 4 reps? It's like nonstop with the questions. Everything is just overthinking. They want to be a perfectionist in every possible outlet. So it's just trying to, for one, patience, and then the second one would be something that I do find myself working on a lot with these guys is helping them mentally, like helping them control their emotions and stress. That's what I really help my, like I have guys do breath work and all that stuff because a lot of them just get like so in their heads, and you could see it reflect on some of their lab work. I'll see their cortisol super high, their sleep sucks, and a lot of them just, they're dealing with things that younger guys are dealing with. They're having relationship problems, money problems, and it's just trying to help them navigate how to navigate that mentally and be in a better place. That's what I find myself dealing with a lot.
I relate to that. I think that's the part of coaching that can be unspoken, but honestly, I think that is where the coaching comes in. It is the people part of the service. I mean, like, you can change someone's nutrition, you can tell them to do more cardio, you can tell them to eat more, but frankly, like, it's the shit that's happening in real time that I feel like, okay, the bottleneck isn't you following what I'm telling you to do. Like, you're paying, you're financially invested. The bottleneck is things that are happening on the back end that maybe you don't feel comfortable sharing with me, or maybe you think, okay, it's not that big of a deal. So
Mm-hmm.
on that, how, I mean, like, I guess give me an example, like, with someone who is struggling with the stress management, like you said, the breath work. I love that. That's good. Um, how deep do you go in terms of like troubleshooting some of these issues? Like, do you give them like, hey, you and your girlfriend are fighting and it's fucking with your sleep because then you're doing X, Y, and Z. Like, do you go as deep to be like, do this week next time this happens?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously all individual dependent, but I've gotten very in depth with a couple guys. Like I've helped guys get better jobs just because they when I was young, I was very, I don't know if it's the word is motivated, but I guess relentless in a sense. Like I would just figure shit out. Like if I had financial struggles, like I would go out and just find a better job. Somehow I just fucking would make it happen. Right. So I would like go, I've had plenty of clients where I'll like look up where they live and find like all the restaurants or something and be like, here, go to all these places this week. Go ask to talk to the manager. If the manager is not there, go back the next day. Give them this fucking resume, give them paper. Like, you need a job with more money. You're going to go get a job serving, making tips. Like, this is the best thing I can tell you to do right now in your situation. If I was you right now, this is what I would do to help you out financially. I've had guys where, I create exact schedules, wake up at this time every day, eat a clock, work at this time, because this is what's going to get you working your circadian rhythm in a good pattern. It's going to help just regulate everything, right? Because you feel like you're constantly stressing, you're falling asleep is super late at this time and that time, and you feel like now you're overthinking because everything is all over the place, and you just need to get yourself into a set routine, right? So if there's something with relationship problems, it's a whole in specific circumstantial thing. But I mean, yeah, it could get pretty in depth sometimes.
I love that. I love the willingness to be specific, but also really focus on getting them into a better position. Um, do you find that a lot of guys, like a lot of your clients, are open to that, or do you ever run into guys who's like they don't want the solution?
I've run into guys who don't want the solution. That's the thing, is my answer is usually always a solution, and a lot of guys do like it. You don't you feel out the client, right? So some guys, they come to you and they're just a lot more open with you off the bat, and that there's going to be a good relationship there. They're very good at communicating. Like, they want help. They're openly seeking advice. I have guys who will just text me randomly and just like literally try to get my advice on something. Hey, my parents are telling me this, but I want to do this. Like, they'll just come to me and tell me that. Obviously, then you have other clients who don't really communicate at all, and when you give them advice, they're just like, okay, or they're just like the message. So they obviously like just aren't that invested, or they don't want to hear. And at that point, if that's what happens, like, I'll reciprocate that same energy. I'm not going to just keep forcing it. It's just, if you don't want to have that, level of relationship, and you just want me to give you your program and meal plan, that's fine. That's how it, if that's how you want it to be, that's fine. I don't have a problem with it, but not everybody's going to be like that.
I think it's really important as a coach to operate the way you are, where you are respecting your own time and your effort, because I mean, like, you doing what you do, I mean, like, you have the coaching aspect, which does take a lot of mental reserve, but then you have the business side of things, so the content creation, and like even thinking so far ahead to be like, okay, like, I want to get these people in better positions so that they get better results, so that they feel like, okay, this was a worthy investment and they can go further places. But the limiting factor is their willingness to want to get better results. If they're happy, if they're comfortable where they are, even though they might be saying something that's, completely the opposite, it's like, I'm not going to want this more than you. Like, I've had a few girls who, I mean, like, at any given time, like, I have women who they will share relationship statuses with me around relationships that frankly are just not very safe to be in, and they'll be like, oh, and this is why, and it's like just very subtle, and just be like, oh, and like, I couldn't because the cops were called, and I'm like, you shouldn't have to have the internet tell you that that's not a safe position to be in. Please get the fuck out of there. Like, please do not do this to yourself. Like, are you going to do this for 5 years? Are you going to do this for 10 years? Like, it's only going to get worse. And those conversations, I think for me, are very emotionally draining because I'm invested and I'm like, yo, like, this isn't going to end well. Like, you're lucky if it ends with just a breakup. But seeing that, seeing like clients who have been in those positions where they've been vulnerable, they've opened up and they've been like, you know what, I think like what I'm doing, it's just not conducive with these goals that I have relative to what we're doing over here. So I'm going to make this change. It's going to be a little rough this next month. My adherence won't be there, but I'm going to do the best I can. What can we make work? I feel like that has been really rewarding when I've been in that position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's another thing I try to relate to them a lot. Is obviously, like you said, you're not going to want this more than you. Nobody can force you to do anything. At the end of the day, it all comes down to your will. When there's a will, there's a way. That's something I mean, it's pretty fucking cliche, but it's something I am always telling people. So for whatever reason, um, because you can relay all this stuff over and over again, and then you might see them not implement it. And like you gave the explanation, the example of the girl, you know, girls in bad relationships and things like that. And there's things in life where, I mean, at least in my experience, I could say it doesn't matter what you tell somebody. Like it's, you have to go through shit yourself to really get the lesson. That's what it really comes down to. And you can relay that as much as like, hey, like you're going through this and I keep telling you this week after week. And like, you really just sit back and sit with yourself and think about what you really want. How important is this to you? Where are your priorities? You know the answers. The answers are there. And if you make the decision to not pursue that and go that way, like that's your choice. And it's eventually there's going to come a day where you're sick of it. That's it. And I can't force that day, but it's going to happen sooner or later. And all I can do is tell you about it here now and try to help you make that decision quicker.
I I agree, and I think that I have a proclivity for getting people to address that kind of stain on whatever is like hindering their progress. So if it is adherence, I'm like, okay, like you fucked off on your diet, whatever. Like, okay, let's do, what happened? Like, paint that picture for me. It was at night. It was after you got home from work. Husband came home. Kids were like, you know, rowdy doing something. You missed your workout. Like, tell me exactly. Help me be there and help me understand what got you to make that decision to be non-adherent, because even though it felt impulsive, even though it felt like an accident, it wasn't an accident. Like there was a point, at some point you were like, fuck it, I'm having the cookies, like they're right there. Like I've resisted, but at this point, like I'm giving in. What was that like what caused you to, you know, what was the straw that broke the camel's back essentially? And I found that a lot of people, like it might be a little like, I want to say painful to go there and to admit like, okay, this was it. Like my husband came home, he was short with me, and like he didn't acknowledge that, like, you know, I fucking have been losing weight and I really am enjoying it. And he actually made a comment that like, you know, he's sick of us not going out to eat or whatever it is. And I'm just like pulling a really loose example. It's like that right there. I'm like, okay, so that was a reaction to something that happened, and like it felt like the best thing that you can do at that point was to use food as a coping mechanism, which sucks. I'm sorry, like you were in that position. I'm sorry, like that is what you felt, because like whether it's appropriate or not, it's not really my place to say like whether that emotional response was indicated, was warranted. But in this case, I'm like, let's solve that. Let's solve it to where like you don't feel like if someone makes a comment, husband, you know, obviously someone closer, it's going to carry more weight, but even someone in the gym, like that's something that that's something I'll hear about pretty frequently, is like, well, so and so made a comment to me that I'm getting a little bulky, like it really threw off the rest of my workout and I had a hard time focusing. It's like, okay, so these things we can't control them, they're other people. What can we do to at least handle what it feels like when we have these experiences, when these negative emotions present themselves? Because realistically, you're probably going to go through life and there are going to be people that say shit to you that affect your willingness, your motivation, your desire to stay on plan. How do we create this fortress that makes you impervious to these things when they happen?
Mm-hmm. I think it's extremely important to have self awareness. I think it's so much easier said than done, what you're saying with a lot of people. Again, this comes back to another thing that I'm constantly relaying. It all comes back to the whole mental aspects. There's a book. It's called The Power of Now. I don't know if you've ever heard of this book.
Yeah, no, it's a good one.
Yeah, it's something I've had a lot of my clients read because a lot of people are very ego driven, right? They lack emotional intelligence. They lack the ability to really like sit back and reflect on what's happening around them and have the awareness to assess it without this emotional attachment or investment into that, right? So, and if you don't have that, you don't have control of yourself or your life. You don't understand why things are happening, why you're reacting a certain way, and to be able to set that aside and say, hey, this is why I'm cheating and not adhering, and like this is really the root cause behind it. Like, you really need to be able to separate yourself from like your ego, your emotions, all that stuff that's invested within that. Yeah, I mean, I think it's extremely important. It's something I have a lot of guys do. That comes in with the breath work, right? Because the breath work makes you more present. It puts you more like a present state. It's like this meditative state, right? So, you gonna say something?
No, no, no. I was just taking a big breath because you said breath work a few times. And I was like, oh, breathed. You haven't breathed correctly. Fucking mouth breathing over here. It's been a long day. Please
No,
go
no, no, but
breath
it
work.
helps them. It helps them clear their minds. I mean, it has for me at least. And it's just a tool, right? And it's really the whole point is just to really become essentially more present and not become invested in the things that are outside of your control, and understand why you might feel a certain way about something and be able to then make a decision as to how you want to react. Right? Somebody's saying this thing to me. I could allow it to affect me. I could allow it to really stress me out. Now, what's going to happen after that? My cortisol is going to spike. My appetite's going to go in the trash, right? It's hard to really it's hard to get good at this stuff, right? Because initially you have that instinct, right? You want to be reactive. You don't want to sit there and try to understand everything. But once you really like put it into practice and always try to have that awareness, you have so much more control of your life and the way that you're able to go about things on a day-to-day basis. And ultimately you are able to therefore become a much more better bodybuilder and get huge.
More muscles,
Yeah,
more
I don't
fat
know.
loss, less drugs, breath work.
Does that
Like,
make sense?
no, no, it does. And I would even say, to piggyback on that is like labeling the emotions that are happening, being very clear on what they are, because I think oftentimes it is just I'm upset or I'm uncomfortable. And even that might be a jump for some people because they don't even know what upset feels like. They don't know how that's manifesting. And then one thing leads to another, and oh, you fucked off on your diet, and you are in the drive-through for Chick-fil-A on every day but Sunday, and you're there, and you're like, I'm doing this, like I'm committed, I'm here already, I made the drive. And I think that's where one being able to make sense or even just acknowledge like, hey, this is what I'm experiencing. Maybe it is anxiety, maybe it is a discomfort, of even just like being in your own body. And I was talking about this recently with someone around like in a fat loss phase, like at the tail end of prep, like it's not even so much the hunger for me. The hunger is very transient, but it's the nagging discomfort of like everything that is done just feels so uncomfortable. Everything is the opposite of what I want to do because the presence, like the focus is very much around, I don't want to be this fucking lean. Like it has very little to do with food because if it did, you would just eat a lot of food and then you would feel better. But it's almost like I describe it like this high or this feeling of being drunk that you can't escape. And you're just so uncomfortable to a point. And the only way out of it, the only way to cure that discomfort, the only way to not be uncomfortable is to not be this lean. And I think a lot of people, they resist that. They resist that feeling of discomfort. And they're like, okay, that discomfort, that hunger, those both indicate I'm doing something wrong. If I was doing things differently, if I was doing them better, if everything was optimized, I wouldn't feel this discomfort. And I think it was the point in which I heard Alberto Nunez, he's like, just embracing it, just embrace that you're going to feel like shit because that is what being starved like for a chronic period of time feels like. Shit, it just doesn't feel good, but it is transient, it's temporary, you'll get through it. And the thing that really turned the page for me was accepting that I'm not going to be able to recreate this discomfort once it's over. Like once I am fatter, once I am out of this state, I'll remember that it was bad. Like I'll remember, yeah, it sucked. It sucked for like many months in a row consecutively. But you won't be able to take yourself physically back there. Like your body's not going to let you do that. You're just going to have this memory that like, yeah, it really wasn't fun. I wouldn't recommend it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, embrace the suck.
Embrace the suck. Yes. When it comes to your own hardships, own things that you struggle with, what is the big one right now for you with your own physique goals?
Oh, I mean, this whole year is pretty shot. I'm basically Anne Frank frail at this point. I have literally barely trained this entire year. I had back surgery. It put me out the whole year basically. So, I mean, I just started training again now.
Wow. Did what for the listeners, when did you have surgery? What did you have surgery on?
Okay. I had a microdiscectomy and a decompression on May 13th. But prior to that, I was basically like barely training. I was doing a lot of athletic rehabilitation stuff. So, like, no real hypertrophy training. I haven't actually trained like a bodybuilder since November. And then I couldn't train, and then I just basically started. I'm basically doing like a lot of that same stuff again, but now I have like more flexibility with hypertrophy training now. So right now, really, my only priority is just getting huge again and wanting to be strong. That's really where my mind is at. It's like I just want to be able to bench 315 again for reps. Like that's all I want to do.
Damn, that has got to take like a huge mental toll. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the thing is I've been through this. This is the third time now.
Wow.
So the year before that, I had to take off 90 days because I had an allergic reaction to growth hormone, which basically fucked my whole immune system. I had an autoimmune reaction to it, and that put me out for 90 days. And then when I was 18, I went to jail for 90 days, so I couldn't train there either. So then I came back and lost everything too. So this is like the third time. So it's not foreign, but it is annoying, right? It sucks now, but it'll come back fast.
Oh, you're gonna drop that on me at minute 50? Okay, I want to ask about both. Damn it. Oh, I'm so
What do you
upset.
mean?
I'm equally invested into both scenarios. What'd you go to jail for?
I went to jail because when I was 16, we were driving around the neighborhood and I was smoking a joint and didn't get caught with it. We threw it out the window, but I was driving illegally without a license. So I got arrested and I was 16. They took my blood and I was charged with the DUI or DWI at that time, which I should have never done because my parents weren't there. They had to give consent. So I fucked up there. And anyways, what happened was they gave me all these like courses I had to do or whatever, and they gave me 6 months to get them done, and I was still missing a couple by the end of the 6 months, and I was under the assumption that I would just get like extended probation for a year. That's what I thought would happen because that's what everybody told me what would happen. They didn't tell me that probation was just going to end, and then 2 years later I would be brought to jail. That's what happened.
Oh,
So
that's
2 years later I was brought back for they charged me with a second DWI for some reason, which I had to get removed because it made no sense, and probation violation when I was 18. So then I went to jail when I was 18 for that.
oh, that sucks. I didn't know they could do that. I don't think you knew they could do that. I don't think people are aware
No,
they can do that. Jesus Christ.
no. I don't think they're supposed to do that.
That sounds very illegal. Like sounds very criminal on their end.
Well, something interesting here. This is not proven, but I have a theory. There was a bunch of judges in the area in Pennsylvania around this time frame who were sending kids to juvenile facilities. It was the operation called like Kids for Cash, and all these judges ended up going to federal prison. And when I got to juvie the first day, what they told me was they said, "Hey, you're Larry's replacement." I was like, "What do you mean?" And one of the security officers there told me, they were like, "Yeah, they'll send kids here just because the facility needs money." Because everybody there was like, "Oh, you're here for smoking weed. That's insane. Like, you shouldn't be here." All these kids were there for like, attempted assault or robbery or trying to sexually assault somebody, like things. And I was just there because I, had some probation violation and smoked a joint when I was 16. So it just really didn't add up.
Are you ready to hear something? Uh,
What?
my boyfriend was supposed to go to jail for that same reason in Pennsylvania, Philly. It was I want to say a petty crime. It was very similar where it was like not technical. I don't think it was related to intoxication. Fuck, I'm looking bad not knowing the details to this. Um, it was like his dad was involved, cop was involved, kind of thing, like a football game, whatever. He's a rowdy kid. Supposed to go to jail, or supposed to maybe even have the court hearing, but exactly what you're describing, that was what let him off. Like they found basically the judges that were doing this, and like they were like, "Oh no, like we're removing all of these charges for like a slew of kids, like in his
Yeah,
hometown." That's
yeah,
insane.
yeah. That was all by me.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't have evidence that it ever happened to me. I probably after it all came out, everybody said I should have went back to court and tried to sue them, but I just wanted nothing to do with it at that point. I was like, I need to move on with my life. But I mean, I'm assuming it probably. I feel like it had something to do with it. It just doesn't make sense to me. Like I don't want to sound like I can't take accountability, but I just don't think I should have been there for what happened.
I oh, that's cold. That gave me chills. Okay. We're gonna go into the growth hormone. You had an autoimmune reaction?
Yeah, so this took a lot of digging, a lot of research. Honestly, it was insane. So the first time I took growth hormone, um, what happened was every morning. This is the only pharmaceutical growth hormone, and I've taken every type. I've taken Serostim, Humotropin, Genotrope, all of them. First time I took it was in 2022, and I didn't really make the correlation exactly. What happened was I took a couple shots, and then every morning I would wake up, and the exact same pattern would happen. I would wake up, as like 20 minutes after I wake up, I'd get these insane cold sweats that would last for like 3 hours. Doesn't matter what I ate. Doesn't matter. I would go shower. It would happen religiously every morning when I woke up. My blood sugar was fine. It made no sense. Nobody could figure it out for me. And it happened for weeks and weeks on end. And I was like, oh, well, this started when I took the growth hormone. So maybe I'll just stop the growth hormone. I stopped the growth hormone. And then about 3 weeks later, it kind of just stopped. And I never dealt with it again. Right. So then I was like, oh, maybe it was from that. Maybe it was just a bad batch of growth hormone. Maybe something happened. Right. And then I tried it again about a year later. I don't even think it was a full year later, when I moved to Florida, and I was using Serostim. And what had happened this time was I was using it for a little bit, and then I like slowly started to get very itchy. But I wasn't like I didn't make the correlation because I had just moved to Florida and it's humid as fuck there, right? So it's just uncomfortable in general. So I'm like, oh, maybe this is just from heat, right? Maybe I'm getting like some type of heat reaction, and it gradually increased, right? So I get a little bit itchy, and then it got to the point where I would get these hives and I'd be just like insanely itchy. I felt like I was having an allergic reaction, and I would go and I would sit in the sauna at the gym because I didn't know this, but what happens is when you're having like an allergic reaction, your body can only produce so much histamine, and then it'll tap out, right? So I was going into the sauna so that I would basically have this insane like hive reaction, and until the histamine would tap out, so then I could go train because I wouldn't be itching anymore, and it would subside for a few hours. But then it just got worse and worse and worse. And it was like unbearable. It literally felt like I was being stung by 1,000 bees at once. And I was like, what the fuck is going on? And I went to go see multiple dermatologists, immunologists. Nobody could figure it out or tell me what was happening. So then I started to think, it's like, okay, I started using growth hormone around this time. And then this kind of started, I think, around this time. And it started to gradually increase with more growth hormone usage. So then after talking to a bunch of people and like trying to connect some dots, what I basically came to the conclusion was, also referencing back to the first time I took growth hormone, was that I must have some type of hypersensitivity to it. And there's different types of hypersensitivities. There's type 1, type 2, type 3. I think there might be type 4. Type 1 is like a basic allergic reaction where you eat peanut butter and your throat will swell up. It's immediate. Type 3 is autoimmune immune complex mediated or something like that. Basically what happens is you have this slow like build up, right? So it happens a lot with like medication, blood pressure medication, things like that, but there's no research on this with growth hormone whatsoever. So there's really like nothing to support it because it's just not that commonly used. And what happens is as you take more, these immune complexes will build up more and more, and basically like it makes your immune system start to attack itself. So the longer you use it, the more exposure you have to it, the more of these complexes are built up in your body. So once you stop using it, it will still take so long for your body to clear out. So since the first time I used growth hormone for a few weeks, it took a couple of weeks for that to clear up, which was referred to as serum sickness, is what it's called. It's a type 3 reaction that people have. The other one, what was called, it's cholinergic urticaria is what it's referenced to, and it's super fucking rare. But again, it's like it's an autoimmune reaction. So what I came to the conclusion was that my body had this, hypersensitivity, and I stopped taking growth hormone. I presented the idea to an immunologist, and she was like, "Oh, that could make sense. I don't know. We'll see." And then it took about like after I stopped growth hormone, it took about 3 to 4 months for it to completely go away.
Fuck,
It was
dude.
insane, dude. It was insane. Any type of heat, like any heat you can imagine. I would wake up. Your body produces adrenaline when you wake up immediately. Like it feels like I'm being attacked by 1,000 bees. I would go like try to use a screwdriver. Just the force, my body just immediate rashes. It was fucking crazy. I had to sit inside an ice cold house in Florida for months.
Oh my God. Now, okay, so when you say you broke out in hives, full body or just specific, like localized, just arms, extremities?
It was specific, yeah. So it'd be mostly my hands and my arms, my chest, my back. It
Yeah.
happened on my face before too.
Fuck.
Yeah,
I mean, it definitely, I mean, like everything you're describing, my understanding is that sounds correct. And frankly, like when you have someone whose autoimmune system is already heightened, like anything like that, and I mean specifically with anything skin related, so like any kind of Mm, any kind of dermis type reaction where you see like almost like eczema or psoriasis, but to the extreme where it is hives. It's like you're putting a growth factor in your body, so it's going to increase whatever is already being produced. So it's like if there already is that sensitivity, but in addition, like you have the immuno response that's just like baseline because of the exposure, and then obviously like continuing to use like the built tolerance to that, that's fucking miserable. And it's not, it's actually something I have heard of in one other instance, like with a client, like, but it wasn't necessarily with the skin stuff, like not predominantly, but it was just an immuno response. And like for her, I was like, okay, like we had tried different medications. And I mean, frankly, I was like, this is not my realm. Okay. Like you need to go see an allergist, you need to go see an immunologist. And with that, like, she tried different medications, antibiotics, antifungals, but it was still this presenting symptom. And I was just like, okay, growth factors, we need to back off of that entirely. So she was also using BPC, TB, and I'm like, all of these we got to pull on. Like, we can't have things that until we figure out like what the root cause is. Because for a little bit, it was like, okay, is this mold exposure? Is this something that, like, obviously your immune system is not happy, and it's happening internally because it's in different environments. So where she was still symptomatic, um, but I mean, like for her, I'm like, listen, like you're going to run this risk probably with any kind of exposure to different growth factors. So that's got to be a real consideration that you make. And I mean, like from what she described, I'm like, that sounds fucking miserable. So I mean, I feel for you. How long ago was that?
That was the winter before this last winter. So was that 2022 into 2023? Yeah. Yeah. It was crazy. I remember I'd be at it was like a fucking movie. I remember I went to the store. I went to Home Depot to get a screwdriver or something, right? And I know I have so much time. So it's like in your mind, it's like a movie playing out where like the fucking clock is ticking down. And I'm asking this guy, hey, can you help me find this? The guy's like, yeah, this is my department, right? He's like, he acts like he knows what's going on. And then we get to the aisle and he has no idea where anything is. And he's like, oh, I don't know. Let me call somebody. And my mind's just like racing. I'm like, I need to get out of here right now. And then I start itching and it's like everything's just like is in slow motion and he's just talking. I just literally just sprinted out of the fucking store, got in the car and put the AC on. I look like a psychopath, but how do you explain to anybody what's happening?
You're like, excuse me, sorry, like my body just does this. Like at
yeah.
any given point, I have no just. I'll be tending to this. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's. But no, so okay, obviously right now you're not using any kind of growth hormone, any kind of GHRPs.
No, I'll never use growth hormone again. I don't even want to risk it at this point. It's just I don't ever want to deal with that again.
Dude, I completely understand. Yeah, I mean, I think those are some of the things like regarding like what you said initially around like we don't have a lot of evidence to support some of these newer drugs, and that's where like when people ask about like risk profiles for anything that's growth hormone related or adjacent, it's like I can tell you whatever baseline comorbidity you have an increased risk of whatever that is. So if that is cancerous cells, if that is an autoimmune response, I mean, like there's no way to predict what your threshold is. So it's like, okay, better be safe than sorry. And then at the same time, if it's not needed, why put it in place? Because like you very well could run into the situation that you ran into where you're like, I don't have any answers. Medical professionals can't really help me at this point because there isn't a lot of good evidence to support it.
Yeah. Yeah. No. I don't think I really have used growth hormone for like 99% of my guys.
Yeah, I mean it's a pain in a lot of ways when you're talking about sourcing and like going through different people. It's like, okay, well, it's going to take a little bit to really assess whether or not you're getting what you think you're getting, which accuracy is a whole different ballpark. But so okay, with the back surgery that was in May. What part of the spine did you have that worked
L4,
on?
L5.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
and you're back. You're in some ways back to hypertrophy training, but restricted.
I'm not restricted. It's just there's things that I need to focus on, like core stability and whatnot. So obviously, like you can't do everything at once, and one is more of the priority than hypertrophy right now. So it's kind of like takes away from that a bit.
Yeah,
But I mean, in a month or so, I should be fine after I move
that'd be good. Where are you moving to?
back to Florida, Tampa.
Back to Florida. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
You're good.
Unfortunately,
Unfortunately, you're not looking forward to it.
I mean, it's Florida. It's just so hot. It's so hot, and
The heat I can do, it's the humidity that just slaps you in the face.
yeah, I know it's terrible. Wait, you're not in California anymore.
No, 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 San Jose, so North Cal, but Jordan, he had a clinic out in Tampa actually. So we were out there in June for like 2.5 weeks, and fuck, man, it was rough. It was a rough trip.
That's what I was gonna say to you because I just went to I went to California because I was looking at moving there. I went to Santa Monica, I went to Venice, I went everywhere, and I don't know. You said that place is nice. That place is a shithole. It's terrible. It's not nice at all.
Sorry you feel misled, but I mean, I don't live there anymore. So, um,
There's like
no,
one nice street and rent is $8,000 a month, and then you go to the other street, it's terrible.
I think you're describing Marina Del Rey. I think that's exactly where you're describing. Yeah, Venice can be a little rundown. There are rundown parts to it. Rent is very expensive. Marina Del Rey, nice, unreasonable, very unreasonable in terms of pricing.
Yeah,
Yeah, San Jose. I moved up here in about June. It's nice, much smaller town vibes to it. I'm happy with it. Jordan, he's got his practice out here, so I mean, like we'll be here for a little bit, but we will be back in Tampa probably in January. So I will have to touch base with you then. You train out of like MI40? Is that your gym when you're there?
I mean, I'm sure I'll go to MI40. I'll probably go more so to Powerhouse. I haven't been there yet, but I think I would probably like Powerhouse more because it has that like old school dungeon type of vibe, and that's just what I like. Is like the old
Yeah.
rusty equipment where you might get uh,
Yes.
tetanus.
That's really what I look for in gyms. I want there to be a hazard in training here.
Yeah, just the hardcore vibe.
I like it. I like it. Well, whenever I'm back there, I will touch base with you, Sebastian. Where can people find you if they want to tune into your content?
Yeah, they can find me at Sebastian Burka and Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. I don't really post on TikTok anymore. I can't deal with it anymore. It's taken too many of my brain cells as it is, and I need to reserve the ones that I have left. Um, Podcast is on my YouTube channel, Brass Stack Bodybuilding. Check it out. That's all I got.
Perfect. Okay. Don't you heard him? Don't follow him on TikTok, Instagram, podcast, like, comment, subscribe. As always, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one.